Hey woodworkers, this is David Hickson, Quabu Woodworking. I wanted to show you my technique for attaching tops to cases for tables or for cabinets, nightstands, that kind of thing. This is an approach I've used on several projects. It's a common technique, but I think sometimes people wonder about exactly how you do this. So what I'm making is these little what we call them wooden buttons that are designed to screw to the bottom of the top and kind of hook it into the edge of the frame. So let me show you that here. On my case here, I have the slots that I've cut in the edge of the frame, just under the top, that will be used to hold the top on. And then these buttons, the way these buttons work is that they go into this slot with this little tongue here that goes in, and when you screw this onto the bottom of the tabletop, you get a clamping action that holds it down to the top, but it also allows movement in here with the seasons so that the top can move around seasonally and not pull the case apart or split the top or whatever. So it's again, this is not a rare technique, but people, I think, aren't often sure how to do this. One thing I like about this is that all I need is a simple screw to hold these on. I don't have to buy any specialized hardware for holding the top on. Those techniques work too, but I just like the fact that this relies more on wood and joinery approaches. So this slot is cut with a domino machine. You can use any technique in order to cut that slot. You know, a mortiser or cut them by hand with a chisel, that's perfectly fine, but you cut this little slot. It's about 1/2 inch deep, and this button is designed to go right in there. The flat part of the slot is 7/8 of an inch wide, so I made my buttons 7/8 of an inch in width, so that, again, there's a little bit of play in there. That's intentional. And they're also sized so that they are the top surface of the button, it rests just a little bit below the edge of the case. I don't know if you can see that here, but the button's actually a little thinner than it would be needed to be exactly flush with the top by maybe a 32nd of an inch or a little more. And that is on purpose, again, so that as I screw this to the bottom of the table, I get a clamping action so that the top is clamped down to the top of the frame here, but again, still allow that seasonal movement. So the way I make these is I cut a strip of wood. In this case, I'm using the same oak that the cabinet's being made out of. So I have this strip that I cut to 7/8 of an inch, and again, that thickness is set so that I get that clamping action. It's just a little bit thinner than what's needed to bring it flush with the top of the case. And so I end up with these, I cut these little 1.5 inch long blocks here that I then cut a rabbet in the edge so that I get that goes into the slot and get that clamping action on the edge. So just use the miter saw to cut them to 1.5 inches, again with a stop block to get repeatability, and making sure I hold it in a way that I'm not getting my fingers in close to the blade. And similarly, when I cut the rabbet on the finished block now, what I do is I take one of my little blocks, and I have a fence on my table saw here. This is the dado blade set to 1/2 inch. That's the depth of, or the width of the rabbet. And I have a fence, a piece of wood clamped to my permanent fence so that I can run my dado blade safely right up next to the fence. And then I have my miter fence here with a block so that I can push my block through the saw blade. But obviously, I don't want to go in there and hold that with my fingers. That would not be a good, safe technique. So I made this little stick here with a notch in it. I cut that on the bandsaw so that it fits over the block and can hold that as I run it through the table saw, through the dado blade. And then you notice here also there's a little gap there. I sized this so that there's a slight gap between the top of the table and this stick to hold it in place. That's, again, so I get a good firm downward pressure on the top of the block as it goes through the dado blade and cuts the groove here. So I'm not going to do it with the saw on here, but after I run it through, basically you get this kind of effect where I get my tongue cut on the block there, and then as I run it through the saw, I can just take it off on the back side of the blade safely. So that's how I do it. I hope that's useful information to you. It works well for me, and I'm going to go ahead and finish up my blocks and get my tabletop on.